Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sask Sports Show on Amateur Sports TV, brought to you by Southwest Terminal. My name is JD Hott, and I'm going to be your host here tonight. My guest tonight, he is a man that has his finger on the pulse in all sports right here in Saskatchewan. He's a freelance reporter, has his own blog, Stank Sermon. I imagine that a lot of people right here in Saskatchewan know who he is. Darren Steinke will be stopping by the show. Darren and I, or at least Darren, being around all sports for so long, we could go on all night. Probably have a 4 or 5 hour show, just talking about different sports. But tonight we've picked one topic, and that topic is going to be the Saskatoon Hilltops. We will be talking about the success of the Hilltops in past years, and also we're going to be getting into their coach, Tom Sargeant, as well. And then near the end of the show, we're going to talk about some Bell Let's Talk. That was last week. Darren, he works at this Gordie House Sports Complex, and we just want to talk about how COVID has affected people's mental health, especially in sports. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, because this one you do not want to miss, everyone. And here's the man of the hour right here, Darren Steinke. Thanks for jumping on the show tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Jay.
No worries. I'm a big fan of your, like I said, you have, your finger on the pulse. It seems like in all sports here in Saskatchewan. I know we've talked, and you've been around the Regina Pats and the Raiders and in Medicine Hat, and and you have your own blog and whatnot. So I figured for people that may not know you, I imagine a lot of people do know you, but just to have you on the show and get to know who you are and talk some Hilltops football.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, the Hilltops are one of my favorite subjects, buddy. Yeah, it's so funny. I'm like, ooh, the pressure and knowing everything. I think I like to know everything. Some people might say I don't know everything, but that's just how it goes. So, but yeah, I've been doing that. It's so weird, just even being on the WHL circuit. I've been doing this for a long time. Like, I've covered pretty much 21 different WHL seasons, and yeah, it started out with way back in the day with Regina, covering the Regina Pats when I was still at the University of Regina, and then I went to the Prince Albert Daily Herald, covered the Raiders for 3 seasons from 01 to 04. Then I went to Medicine Hat for 10 seasons, and then on that circuit, that's where I'm best known for. Was covering the Tigers for 10 years from 2004 to 2014 with the Medicine Hat News, and the Tigers had quite a bit of success at that time. And then I made a family move back here in the summer of 2014, and it's covered the WHL for 6 more seasons, basically trying to do more or less the league as a whole with the focus on the Saskatchewan teams. And because after 15 seasons of focusing on one team, I wanted to change it up for a bit. And yeah, and also it's funny because coming back here, like the main sport I played or the main sport I was involved with, like growing up, was football. And then, when I get back in here, I forget how much of a football province Saskatchewan is. And when you mentioned the Hilltops, one of the first things I did was I remember I ended up at a Hilltop game. Wasn't even covering them. I just showed up one day after, and it was actually after a loss in 2014, and I got back in touch with Tom Sargeant. I hadn't seen him for it probably was 10 years at that time. And then I had Jeff Yowzy was defensive coordinator, still is, and Sheldon Ball, one of my longtime buds, was the offensive coordinator. He used to play football for the U of S Huskies, and he was with the Hilltops before. And I got in touch with everybody, and all of a sudden on the Hilltops front, I covered lots of football with the Huskies and the Valkyries, but yeah, on the Hilltops front, I ended up getting rolling with them, and it wasn't really even a planned thing. It was just something I fell into, and it was like, wow, this is cool, and we all think the same way. And it was kind of crazy too, because everybody remembered me for involvement with the Regina Rams, because with the Regina student media, I covered the Rams for 2 seasons, their last 2 years junior, first 2 years of university. Actually, in the second year of university, when they went to Vanier, I ended up practicing with them for a few weeks when they had some injury troubles until everybody got back. So it's like running practice with them on the scout team. So everybody kind of remembers me. At first, always remembered me as a Ram guy. When I came back up here, like people that were involved with football back then. For the players, they had no idea who I was, but yeah, it was so much fun hooking up with them again and stuff. And yeah, it's been 6 years. It's been 6-7 years of fun.
Well, and going back to when you said working in Medicine Hat, I know you said you started there at 2004, and if I remember correctly, in 2006, they went on to win the Memorial Cup.
There was no 04 they won league. I missed that because I was fishing covering Raiders that year. In 07, that's when they and Tigers ended up winning the WHL final that year, and that one's of course remembered for Brendan Bosch from Martinsville here. He got the double overtime winner in Game 7 in the fog at the Medicine Hat Arena because fog was raising because of the humidity in the building, and they beat the Vancouver Giants 3-2 in Game 7 in double overtime and won the WHL title. And Vancouver was the host team for Memorial. And actually, that series a lot of times was viewed as like the best WHL series ever played. And that Game 7, a lot of places was viewed as the best WHL finals championship game ever. And then, of course, both teams, Vancouver was hosting the Memorial Cup that year, so both teams went to the Memorial Cup, and both teams ended up in the Memorial Cup final after the Tigers finished first in round robin, and the Giants ended up winning the championship final in the Memorial Cup 3-1. That included an empty net goal. So, yeah, there was quite the – it was crazy on Tigers front looking back then because there was quite the rivalry cross-conference, which you don't really see in the Dub because usually – you don't really see two teams where they're hated teams in the other conference, or you build a hated team with the other conference. It's usually like a Lethbridge, or like, of course, the most famous rivalry in Saskatchewan's Regina Pats, Moose Jaw Warriors. That's one of the most famous rivalries in all of junior hockey. And so I covered that one. And then another crazy fact was there's only been 2 WHL finals that have gone to Game 7 in overtime, decided Game 7 in overtime, and I covered both because the other one was 2019 when the Prince Albert Raiders beat the Vancouver Giants 3-2 in overtime on Dante Hanoun's overtime winner, and I did that one for my blog, and I wrote a whole bunch of items for CHL publications and stuff as the Raiders went off to the Memorial Cup. But yeah, I was in the building for both times. The WHL Championship Series was decided in Game 7 in overtime. I was in the building both nights.
I can't imagine how exciting that would have been. I remember, I'm from Kamloops, and roughly around the year I was born, the Blazers won back-to-back Memorial Cups.
Yeah.
And then those years they were stacked. They had NHL. They had players that went on to have long careers in the NHL, including Jerome McGinley, Daryl Sador, Darcy Tucker, Mark Recchi. I'm pretty sure Scotty Niedermeyer was a part of that team, and having a coach like Ken Hitchcock at the time, and players Tyson Nash and Shane Doan was a part of that team, and it was just back in the day, and they didn't even play in the arena that they played in now. They played in the Memorial Arena, very small. It's meant for minor hockey now. It wasn't at the time meant for blowing the roof off a barn and having fights in the penalty box and players jumping over and getting in fights with fans and stuff like that from the stories that I heard. But I can't imagine how cool that would have been to experience 2 WHL finals.
Yeah,
doing that.
Yeah, going to overtime because it was like crazy. Because also we think back to Blazers runs because of course people have memories in Saskatoon where I'm based here because in 92 and 94, the Blazers ended up playing the Blades in the WHL final both those years. Both those years, both series went to Game 7, and the Blazers prevailed in Game 7. And, of course, Lauren Mullikin's a longtime family friend who was the Blades coach at that time. He's been Blades coach and GM for a whole number of years. But, the people here, and from what I remember when I saw the scores, I think the 94 Game 7, like the Blazers won like 7-1. I think 1992 the Game 7 score. I never seen it, but I've heard it wasn't a close game either, even though it went to Game 7. But a lot of people still remember that here because they're like, well, if the Blades would have broken through because the Blazers went out and romped through the World Cup each year. What would have been, would that have been their year? And they played the Memorial Cup champs twice, and 2 out of 4 years, or 2 out of 4 years, and went to Game 7 in the league final and lost, and were that close. So yeah, there's some memories about those series here.
Probably still some tough pill to swallow when the Blazers come to town. But what, you being a journalist and a sports reporter, what made you want to get into something like that, as a kid, or, anything like that?
Well, pretty much when I was a kid, it was pretty much, it sounds weird, but I ended up graduating high school out of Winnipeg and stuff. And the first 19 years of my life lived in Winnipeg. Then my family transferred to Regina for a year, so I was in Regina for a year. Then, weird thing, in grade 7 and 8, we were transferred to Edmonton. So I was actually in Edmonton when the Oilers won the Stanley Cup in 1990, the last time they'd done it. And actually went to one of the games in the Stanley Cup final that year. Happened to be the one they lost to Boston. Games, it was 2-1 or whatever. It just happened. It just worked out that way. But yeah, no. Growing up, you kind of I played football in high school in Winnipeg, but I was athlete-wise. So you start one. I knew, okay, I'm probably not going to be able to make the career of it athlete-wise. I was confident with the hands, so it's even in high school, my grade 12 year, I was thinking, well, I'd like to go into journalism. And at the time, the media industry wasn't as kind of strict as it was here. I think at the time, the Regina Leader Post probably had 10 sports writers at that time, when I was starting to make those decisions. And I was well, the Jets, of course, the Jets were in Winnipeg. I was thinking, well, I would love to cover the NHL. Or actually, one of the big things was I actually wanted to cover the CFL because the Bombers were quite good as I was growing up. They got to befriend and become pretty good friends with the late Cal Murphy. My later on years when I moved to Regina, and I never had met him in Winnipeg, but in later on time, and that's a whole story in itself. But I kind of actually wanted to cover football first, so that's what kind of made my inkling. And also I got interested in the NFL when I was in high school, and with the 49ers and when Joe Montana, or junior high and then into high school, starting off with the 49ers and Joe Montana. So it was yeah, I'd like to do this as a career. So, and then I got accepted, got scholarship, got accepted in the University of Regina, and they had a pretty good journalism communications program there. My parents happened to get transferred when I had to go to school there, so that was quite a nice bonus. So, big time bonus for me at that time. And yeah, it was kind of where the inklings of why I wanted to get into this now, because I know when people say now it's so strict, and it's why do you want to do this? And I felt back then there was more interest than there is now, because I remember when I was the sports editor at the student paper, the U of R 97-98, we had 7 sports writers. And if you have one person at student paper writing about sports now, that's a lot. But that just shows how the industry's changed. But there used to be a lot bigger, and kind of that was the attraction. Now I think if you try to start out now, there'd be some people who are what are you doing and stuff, why do you want to do that? But if it's that's your passion, I'd say go give it a try for a while. And then if you find you're not getting it, I will say though, after 5 years, if you're not thinking you're getting into the NHL or anything like that, you might have to try a different path in life. But I still say give it a try. And one of the hard things I always find, sorry about that, but on my WHL circuit, this tongue sticks on the top of the roof. But the travels in the WHL circuit, I meet a lot of great young media guys, all over the place. I remember meeting guys in Red Deer, and my buddy Lucas Bakari up into Prince Albert, so give him a shout out there. But there's a lot of good young guys out there, and I remember even the crew in Red Deer, and they were well, you're this old veteran, and you're the wise old guy, and you feel okay, you're trying to give them advice and encouragement, because first thing you always realize is, oh my God, these guys are talented. They're young and talented, and And then there's part of me wishing, man, I wish the industry was like bigger and I could be like an editor or something, because I learned for a while there, when I interned at the Saskatoon Star Phoenix when their late great sports editor Doug McConaughey was there, and I learned a lot from how Doug kind of let all the employees there be themselves, and their work came out, and he pretty much just offered them encouragement, and just how he personally went about things. And I've always wanted to apply those lessons, but there's just been, as I said, the industry's changed so much. But for some of those younger ones I met on the time, I'm like, man, it'd be so much fun to work with them. And even my successor in Medicine Hat, Ryan, he's a McCracken. He is a freaking outstanding guy and stuff. And I think he's the city editor of the paper. He's the city editor of the paper there now. But and there's parts of me thinking, man, I'd love to work with guys like that at some point in time. At least on the freelance side in PA, I've gotten to work with Lucas and Peter Lazinski up there, and that's been a ton of fun.
Well, I've noticed too that I'm going to broadcasting school, and then we also do journalism as well. And I know that sports journalism, it's different than just being a journalism for a news anchor.
Yeah.
Because of the fact, like from what I've found, the writing style is different with sports than it is with covering news. And because you're trying to paint a picture. It's no different than a play-by-play broadcaster, in my opinion, on the radio, trying to paint you a picture of what's going on every second of every game, or what's going on in the arena right now. And that's what I feel that sports writing is like as well.
Oh yeah, you're trying to paint a picture, and then a lot of times you're trying to make it go with the pictures too. Because this might sound weird, but as much as I enjoy writing, I like taking pictures better. And people follow my Instagram account or my Twitter accounts over the years can see that. And especially when I started, like I shot a bit when I was in university, and then a little bit in PA, and then most of my years in Medicine Hat, like I was hired to be a WHL beat writer, and then I would pick up covering the Rattlers because college scene was the Medicine Hat College Rattlers, because I worked in the post-secondary scene before, and they were a fun bunch. But yeah, my main focus was WHL, and besides covering the Tigers, you're covering like league issues or writing about league things, right? And so for a long time, I didn't shoot any photos at all. Like when we went to I remember when we went to Memorial Cup, and this was in the Medicine Hat News, this is a community-owned chain. Like I went with Colin Gallant, like it was their team of us. So I went Colin Gallant, who covered the Tigers with me, and he is really talented, one of my best friends. And then our photographer went, Emma, who her and Colin were dating. I don't think they're engaged yet, but they've later gotten married and stuff. So we all went as a group, and Emma shot all the photos, and I would have like a point shoot where I went and took pictures for like my own album and stuff like that as memories. But yeah, I didn't start shooting until, of course, the chain got sold. When the local chain got sold, we got bought by a big corporation. Then all of a sudden, I ended up having to shoot photos again, and that's when I ended up picking the full side. And I find it's just more rewarding to get for me, to get a bigger picture, because the picture is just there and then it's gone. And then if sometimes you miss it, like what was in the viewfinder wasn't, when you look in the screen, the back is not there. Like, yeah, it's there for a second and then gone. But if you capture it, it's like, oh, wow, I got this. It's so awesome.
Well, like I said, like that, the capturing those moments, and I know you've captured a lot of moments in your time as well. But it's
the calling card is the Dante Nunes goal celebration shot from the overtime winner for the Raiders. That one's where I think my most famous photo.
And like I said, you got to capture that. You got to be there, and you had to capture that moment so you can keep that forever.
Yeah.
But. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and keep it forever. And also, like, it's one of those things when others look back on, like, I've had it on my blog, and others look back at it, it brings back the memories of that time. And then the emotion that's in that photo is so rich. And it's just, it tells us, a lot of the times it tells the story by itself.
Oh, and I imagine it does.
Yeah.
And then I know you said you had your blog. to put it on and to always have that to look at. So that's really exciting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's sweet. So, oh man, yeah. No, I could, as I say, I could tell stories forever. So, but yeah, I just heard you want to talk about the Hilltops. You want to do a bit of a dive into that? I better turn this guy off here. I just I hate it when this goes off. Sorry about that.
No worries. I feel like this.
I always forget. I haven't done broadcast for a while. I'm like, oh yeah, you're supposed to turn off the phones.
Well, I feel like this is a perfect time to take a commercial break. It's everybody's favorite time of the show here on the Sask Sports Show. It is commercial time, so we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, like Darren said, we're going to dive right into Saskatoon Hilltops, and we're probably going to be going on for that for about, I would say, another probably about 30 to 45 minutes of the show. So get ready for some Hilltops football. We'll be right back. And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show on Amateur Sports TV. I'm with my great guest, Darren Steinke. And like I said before the show, we are going to be talking some Saskatoon Hilltops football. So I'm going to get right into the action. The Hilltops, and I've just started to get to know them moving here to Saskatoon. They have 21 national titles in more than 70 years. Oh, there's 22 now. Yeah. Okay. I guess the information that I got was false then. And I apologize to everyone that's watching that's a Hilltop fan. I apologize. Yeah. I'll give you my Twitter account after. So my mistake. 22 national titles in more than 70 years. And in my opinion, they're a staple in the Canadian Junior Football League. They've had 5 undefeated seasons. They've like you said, you've been a part of their 6 straight national championships. So my first question is, what is it about the Hilltops that has made them so successful in years past?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's so crazy because the Hilltops are an institution here. You think about it, when they were born, the modern version of the Hilltops was born in 1947, which is the current version. There was an old Hilltops team before that existed before World War II. And of course, when the war happened, all those things folded. And like a lot of sports, things folded because, of course, you're going to fight the war. And then in 47, a group of directors here, they ended up forming Ed Hennick and Richardson. They ended up forming the modern version of the Hilltops. Even from 47, that year they won the provincial final at that time. And then in 48, they actually compared to their first Canadian final in their second year as a team. And then the first national championship came in 1953 here at they played at that time in front of 7,400 fans when they beat the Windsor AKO Fratmen in 1953. That was their first national championship. And as part of it, it's almost like I say, the Hilltops are an institution here and they're a family. It is like Hilltop family. It sounds cliche, but it's true. And just it's been this tradition that's just been kind of passed down all the years. Like the directors that are there, like they stay there for years and years, and you always have that consistency, and they've always had a long stretch of long running coaches. And of course, Tom Sargeant, their current head coach, is probably the face, is the guy who's the all-time Hilltops coach. And of course, he's one of the, as far as amateur football goes in Saskatchewan, he's up there with Gord Curry, Brian Tyerson, Frank McChrystal on the Mount Rushmore of the best amateur football coaches at the amateur level that Saskatchewan's ever seen. Of course, in post-secondary football in Canada, he's the all-time wins leader with 210 wins, 30 losses, and 2 ties. And for the last 30 or so years, the Hilltops have, of course, in junior football, you play 18 to 22. So you can have players for 5 years. And basically at this cycle where the players come in their first 2 years, they're kind of learning everything. And then once they become third and fourth years, that's when they kind of get the point where they're starting and they've taken over from the guys that were in their third to fifth years that had been starting before for all that period, and they know everything, so everything's been passed down to them, and they've learned under the veterans. Then they take over and be the veterans, and then the new group of first and second years come in, and they get and they start learning under the new set of veterans. So they always have this cycle going on. So I guess and some in the dynamics that way that keeps going. And then also they're so embedded into the community. Tons of their players end up being teachers or working as businessmen or working in trades in the city of Saskatoon, and it's a whole ton of them end up out, especially the teachers, end up coaching the high school teams here, and the other guys that might be working as tradesmen or in businesses and stuff will come on and be assistant coaches. So, and then they'll also, besides high school football, they'll coach all the minor football going down to, I think you can start playing at age 8 here, and so they're always involved in everything. So they're helping bring the next generation of players up, and you get to know the Hilltops that way. And also the alumni stay involved, and they end up keep going on to the games. And of course, one of the Hilltops traditions they always have at the start of every year is their alumni game, where the current team ends up playing an alumni team in an exhibition match. And they've had this tradition going on for, I don't know how many decades it's been going on now. Like Tom Sargeant, the current head coach, at one time used to play in the alumni games because he was a Hilltops player in the mid-1980s, and he won his first national title as a player with their 1985 championship team. And so, in the alumni game, the alumni team would play the current team, and then a lot of times we'll have like a little social afterwards too. So all of a sudden, like the current team gets to know all the old guys that were part of the team in the past, and the old guys, for them, it's also a way to keep connected with the team because it's like this one time every year, okay, we all get to come back and try to be young, and then we're all together for that like 1 year. So it's always something to look forward to. And like you say, it's been like over 70 years, since 47, like over 70 years, they've just had all this tradition built in, and everybody that's been involved, like they've had consistency in coaching, and just everybody's kind of stayed around, and everybody feels a part of the family with the Hilltops.
Well, and with that many national championships in more than 70 years, and having that consistency, I feel like you said, that is the key. It's a revolving circle with, and I used to live in Saskatchewan. I was in grade 9, and in Gull Lake, and football in the province of Saskatchewan is so big, and we played 6-man there. Yeah. I didn't play. I don't know, at that point they were going for their second straight provincial championship. Yeah. And it just I don't think I've ever been to a province that is so involved in football like Saskatchewan, which is great to see. You have especially with football and hockey being so powerful out here, and having a very successful Canadian junior football team like the Hilltops is just awesome.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, of course, the Hilltops, and also Thunder too, down in China. Like the Hilltops have got players from all over the province, and a lot of times for guys, some of the first years and second years that come in, there'll be guys from like the 6-man and 9-man programs that come in, and of course the 12-man game is a bit different. So a lot of the reasons some of those guys might not start right away is they're learning the 12-man game, and then some of them like Kurt Simonson from Langley, like he played the 6-man game, and he ended up playing offensive line for the Hilltops, and he was like an all-star, and he was, once he got in starting, he was outstanding. And then we joke, I remember his 5th year, we're joking, well, you got to try to make Sarge set up a play where you go for a pass, because we were talking about the differences between 6-man and 9-man, and Simonson played offensive line and 6-man. He goes, yeah, in 6-man football, I actually went out and passed patterns and caught passes, which you can't do in 12-man unless you declare yourself eligible, and usually it's a goal line play. And Simonson's going, yeah, I caught 4 touchdown passes in my grade 12 year. And like, well, you got to tell Sarge that and see if you can get like a trick play snuck in there where you're like, on the goal line, you go out for a pass and get one like pass out there, dude. Like you gotta be on top of that stuff. Like you gotta get some hands. Like
oh jeez.
And the O-line guys. So one of the other things too, like on the field, why the Hilltops, where it starts, where they'll get it. Of course, everybody knows is the quarterbacks and the receivers and the running backs and the defensive backs, but it's their own D line. Like in the 6 years I've been here, like almost every year on par, like their O and D line's been outstanding, and it's incredible the work that they do. And Donnie Davidson does the coaching on the O-line. He's just outstanding. He can work with guys that are like taller at 6'5", or guys that are right at 6 feet and maybe right at 300 pounds, because it's all the steps are a little bit different depending on your body size and your height. And you can't like teach a guard that's 6'5", 300 pounds. You can't teach him the same steps as he does, different steps compared to somebody that's 6 feet and right at 300 pounds, because it's just a different body type. And sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good.
But yeah, and then Fisher, he's coaching. He coaches the D line, and like there's been years like their D line's been outstanding. Because one thing that's interesting with the Hilltops is usually their base defense, and this is almost the D they kind of run on every play, is like kind of your typical cover 3 read and react defense, where you basically have the safety and 2 defensive backs like covering deep, and it's your standard zone defense like they pretty much teach you in high school. But the reason they run that read and react defense is they get pressure so much just rushing the 4 defensive linemen. And especially I remember their D line the 2015 season where they had Matt Cozen and Blake Adams, and then they had Tom Schnitzler on the defensive end and Blake Herman on the other defensive end. They basically would just fold up the other team's offensive line, and a lot of times, like the linebackers and defensive backs would just drop back into pass coverage and watch the 4 D linemen go sack the quarterback, and the play was over. Or even stuff the running back, or sometimes the linebacker didn't even have a chance to go try to make a read and get the running back at the line of scrimmage on a running play. Like the D line on a lot of the years was so dominant, especially that season. When your D line's that good, then all of a sudden you can, if you wanted to, makes up coverages and throw in some different blitzes you want, because you're just getting pressure with 4 guys. And it's like, yeah, it's just it makes the game really easy all of a sudden on defense when you're able to do that.
Well, and being so successful as the Hilltops have been, like you said, having those experienced guys come in as coaches, if it's, your offensive line, your defensive line, a head coach, even special teams and whatnot. It makes it that much more better, for these guys, because these guys have been there. They know exactly what to expect, especially in this league too.
Yeah. And then, of course, the coaches, a lot of them, like they say, Sarge has been the head coach since 1998. And before that, he was an assistant coach for 7 years. He was this assistant coach for 2 national championships there. And now he's, of course, won 13 national championships as a head coach. No, 12 national. I just got to double check the math here. I think it might be 13 as head coach. So, yeah, it's just crazy. And 13. I was thinking 4 from 2000 to 2009, and then the run of 9 in the last 10 years. Yeah, 13 championships as a head coach, and then Jeff Yowsey's been the defensive coordinator for a long time, and a lot of the assistants have been on staff for a while. And Sheldon was the O coordinator for the longest time, and Sheldon ended up having to quit that once he ended up having to make a family move with his wife's job, because his wife was a police officer, if I remember, and so she ended up in another community. But Sarge took over the play calling duties, and he ended up doubling up as the offensive coordinator. And one thing that's always impressed me with that too, because head coach Sarge, of course, you're kind of managing all sorts of everything on the football field. But of course, with Sarge having been a tight end on the old days, yeah, he was actually a tight end when he played. So it's back in the 80s. They still used the tight ends all the time, but he played on the offensive side of the ball, and he calls as an offensive coordinator for the last 3 seasons. He actually calls a really good game. Like it's just like amazing to see. Like you would have thought he had been like a quarterback for like his playing career and stuff, and just the way different ways he sees things and the planning out of plays to keep the other team off balanced. And sometimes if your defense gets a turnover at key time, going for a quick big play moment at that point, because of course the other team's down and your team's like pumped up, just knowing the moments when to make those types of play calls. And it's just, it's really cool to see. And it, like you say also too, is being head coach and the coordinator at the same time, like that's a lot on your plate. And he, since the last 3 seasons that the Hilltops have played, like he's done them both, and it's just like, wow, it's been incredible.
Well, and while we're on the topic of Sarge, we said that you mentioned that he started in 98. He took over in 98, and he played as a Hilltop. He was assistant coach, and it's how do you think the players react, and for a coach to be able to coach a team that he's played for?
Well, right now the players, of course, they all respect him because he knows he's been there. He knows, and he's won so many championships. He's been through the wars, and also too, like he's pretty much perfectionist too. It's like that was one of the key things. Like even if you're winning big, like if you're still slipping up when you're winning big, like he's on you. Like one of my favorite stories. This is from the 2015 season. I think it was a game where the Hilltops blew it. I believe it was the Winnipeg Rifles that year, and Adam Mackhart, who was Canada West MVP last or 2019 with the University of Saskatchewan Huskies and set their rushing record. He started out playing for the Hilltops, and in 2015 he was on kick return because Logan Fisher was starting at running back, and it was a game they blew out. They blew out the Winnipeg Rifles, and Mackhart ended up running back a kickoff for a touchdown. Ended up being like the PFC Special Teams Player of the Week. I kicked back. It was 101 yards and stuff. But on that return, he accidentally dropped the kickoff, right? And then picked up the ball and made this great run, uses blockers, great recovery. He scored. He was thinking, all right, I made this great play. I made this recovery. And as soon as he comes off field, Sarge right in his face, what the bleep are you doing? Catch the ball in here! And the backguard, he's like, ah! It's just, but yeah, he just like win, like especially games when you're up at. It is important to win. If you're like lacking off and you're not doing everything right, like even if it ends up being a successful play, like Sarge is not happy. You're gonna hear about it, and yeah, the guys all know that. Like you see that right away. Like everybody knows the big thing with Sarge. He's like all emotions, like all the time, and like his post games media scrums or just any interview with them basically can stand his 5 minutes of television by themselves when he just gets going. It's just beautiful. But it's so funny to see that fiery side of him too. Like he does really care about the guys, and the guys understand that, and the guys realize, okay, he knows what he's taught. He knows what he's talking about because, of course, he played with the Hilltops, and he cares about the team because he played for the Hilltops, and like he's starting to close in on, you almost think about it, almost 40 years with that program. And he knows all the history that's happened before. And I remember one of their longtime directors, Don McDonald, who's there in the 50s, he was one of the guys that was pushing to have Sarge be head coach. And that was a big thing with Sarge. And Don passed away. He was very old. I think it was the 2018 season. No, 2017 season. No, 2018 season, yeah, Don passed away. And but Sarge, that meant a lot to him. Like Don went to bat for him, and like he'd been a director, and he was like, even in his later years, Don McDonald's was a very sharp guy, and like for Sarge that meant a lot that he went to bat, and he knew like this tradition he was carrying on, and then of course he'd been an assistant coach for like 7 years, and also too, like he's pretty big on them, like how they carry themselves, like when they're not on the field. Like the guys on the Hilltops are pretty well mannered, like they're well mannered. They're just well mannered, really good guys when they're away. Like I'm sure, like every young adult, you do go out, you have fun, but they have like a great sense of honor to them. When they're away from the game, like when they're having to deal with things at home with their families, they're great back home with their families. And the guys that have girlfriends, like their relationships are great. And like I say, I've seen a few after playing days were done, a few of the guys, like marriages happen right away, and then afterwards they go on and they're great guys in society. They have great careers and end up giving back. But they've learned all that when they were with the Hilltops. And like if you're not carrying yourself the right way, like if you don't straighten up pretty quick, you're just going to be gone, right? So that's just how it is. And also with the Hilltops being so successful, if you do come in with an attitude, it's like, well, there's somebody that wants that spot, and if his attitude's better, like, and if he's got some athletic ability you can work on things with, like, even if you are really good, you're just not going to be there. That's just how it is. Like, they want the character of the guys is the first thing, and then from that, you're looking at what their athletic ability is, and then you go from there. But if you don't have the guys as the first thing, you're not going to be able to. You're just not going to be consistently successful like they have been for like years and years and years. Like I say, this run of 6 straight, and then like they won 9 of the last 10, and that's like everything they've done in that amazing run. And then like I say, it is a pretty big family, and a lot of it goes back to Sarge. Like Sarge still spreads out the credit because his assistant coaches are outstanding. Like that is. Like their coaching staff, you'd be hard pressed to find that good of coaching staff, even at the pro levels, like what they got with the Hilltops. So, but still, like Sarge is the main linchpin. He's the guy like they all rally around. Like when he got his 200th career win, and became the second coach to do that in Regina, like everybody knew that was like a big thing for all the players that were on the field at that time, and also too he does. Treat the individuals differently. Like he realized, okay, some guys you need to be kind of like more of the friends with them, and they kind of know what they're doing. You just give them feedback. Other guys, he knows, okay, you got to get in their face and yell at them because that's and light a fire under their butt because that's the only way they go. But so like there's so many of these different interworks, and also like I said. You've noticed this when he's been the offensive coordinator. He can see the game so well. It's like artistry. It's really cool to see.
Well, from what you said, he sounds like a really nice guy, and the fact is that he's brought a winning culture to the Hilltops and to the city of Saskatoon, which is awesome. It gives something for when hockey season's done. It gives them something to look forward to for the people.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because I noticed the first time I got here, when the Hilltops get on a run, because of course everybody has great memories of all these built-in memories of when they've won, because they won 3 national titles in the 50s, won a couple in the 60s, they got 178, won the 80s, and a couple in the 90s. And so we had all these built-in memories. So when they go on the run and like they win the PFC final again, and then there's a semifinal, and win the Canadian Bowl, and become CJFL champs again. Like once that run starts going that way, like everybody gets pulled into it. It's like, oh, this is because you remember what's happened with the past. Oh, this is great to see this is happening again. And it's like the Hilltops are this one constant. Okay, this and this could be going bad in your life if you're following them. This and this X, Y, and Z could be going bad in your life, or something could be going off the rails, or some of the other sports teams in town that you hope everybody does well, but you might be having a struggle this season. And then it's like, oh, there's the Hilltops. They're going again. It's like that consistent thing, good thing that's always happening. And they're that consistent good thing that always happens. And here they go again. They're making another run, and it's and all their guys are outstanding. Where like over the years, like guys like James Voss, their safety, or Jordan Walls, their quarterback. Before Jordan Walls, Jared Andrzejczyk, and even the 2019 season, the way the quarterbacks turned over. Tyler Herman, when he finally started, he was starting in his last year of eligibility, and they went and had a perfect season. He had a really good year stats wise, and he had a really good year as a starter, and that was like his big year. And like, but that was like another thing you could rally around. Is like he put in all these 4 years of time, biding his time, and then when it was his time, even though it was one season as a starter, he took off. And same with Jaden Pingay. He'd be subbed in as a linebacker, and then in 2019, that was his first full year as a starter. He ended up being the CJFL Defensive Player of the Year, and that was just it's just like incredible. But yeah, being that one constant good thing, it allows Saskatoon to rally around that too, and just any season builds its own success story, and it's just cool to see.
Well, it is very cool to see. And, we're like I said before, we're going to be talking a lot more about the Hilltops on this episode of the Sask Sports Show. But for right now, we're going to take a short commercial break because that's how we get paid here on the show. We get commercials. So something that we have to do. But when we come back, we're going to be talking more Hilltops. I hope you guys are enjoying the show, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sask Sports Show right here on Amateur Sports TV with my guest Darren here. And before the break, we kind of dove into the Saskatoon Hilltops. And Darren has, he's been covering the team for their sixth straight national titles in a row. So starting right out of the commercial, kind of tell me about some of those experiences that you've had covering that 6 straight national championships.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because I remember the start of the 6 straight, and it kind of coincides with my move here and stuff too. Because of course I moved here in the summer of 2014, so I just had arrived in Saskatoon, and I kind of started my blog at the end of April. So you're just trying to get settled in. So I was right here before the Hilltop season started, and then of course the start of the run, it didn't. If you would have talked, especially the start of that 2014 season, you would not have seen like the 6 in a row coming, because in 2013, the Hilltops had won 3 in a row from 2010, 11, and 12. And then 2013, they had a really good veteran team, and then they had a really good season. And I remember one of the biggest thing was Andre Lalonde had set their rushing record for most yards in the season in 2013. And they had returned a lot of veteran starters, and that was one of the years, okay, they're supposed to win. Like, it's hands down. They're supposed to win the CJFL title, the 3-time defending champs. They got a veteran roster. They've done all this for 3 years, right? And then in the PFC final, they get upset by the Regina Thunder here in Saskatoon, 21-16. And then the Regina Thunder go on and win the CJFL title. And then start of the 2014 season, the Hilltops are in one of those situations where, okay, their first and second year guys from the previous seasons are now like the third and fourth year guys, and now they're taking over all these starting positions. And I think that year, this might sound weird, but they only had like 5 guys in their final year of eligibility in CJFL football, which doesn't happen to them too often, but that it was just one of the years the generations worked like that. They were only going to have 5 graduating players. And then they had a whole bunch of new guys and first and second year players that year in 2014. And then the way the schedule started out, they had to play Regina twice out of the first 3 years. And the first week of the season, they went down to Regina, lost in overtime, 16-13. And then they came back here. Saskatoon minor football field was still going renovations. They play at Griffiths. They just squeak out a win against the Edmonton Huskies. And then the third week, they were opening, the renovations were done at Saskatoon minor football field. So they were opening up the new turf, playing the Thunder at home. And when they were 1-1. And in that game, like things started out really well. Like for 3 quarters of the game, you thought, oh, they're off rolling because they got up to Hilltops got up 25-3. And this is so crazy. This is the first game I ended up catching the end of, and that was the first game I got physically at. So they were up 25-3, and then the Thunder got a field goal to make it 25-6. So it was 25-6 with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The Thunder like miraculously get 3 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, win 26-25, where they end up also recovering 2 onside kicks in that surge. And they fell to 2-1. And of course, they had just lost the Thunder in the last PFC final. And then they're now 1-2 to start the 2014 season. Both those losses were to Regina. And of course, now they've won the series, so you're losing the season's tiebreak for first place. And it wasn't panic, but it was like, oh my God, what type of team do we have here? And it was one of the rare times there might have been some self-doubt happening with the Hilltops, or you just didn't know. It was like a shocker because they're not used to dealing with that. It was kind of one of the biggest adversity points they had in years. And it was crazy. The thing that pulled them out was they had a 5th-year middle linebacker named Justin Filto, who ended up it was an All-Canadian All-Star that season. And he was just the greatest personal guy in the world. He would do anything. It was he passed away in 2018 in a plane crash when coaching the Valkyries. It's such a hard thing to take because he's such a great guy. But that year, it was Filto being Filto, and he knew what to do. And he realized, one of our problems we're having is we got this group that's been together for a bit, but all the new people, they're learning their starting positions, but we have all these new people, and we haven't really been hanging out. We've gone through the training program and stuff. So he decided, what we need to do is we need to have a team party, away from the field, just to get to know each other. And he said, so he had basically the whole team over at his place. He thought, we need to get that big so everybody starts knowing who everybody is. And it was kind of that quiet thing. That was the turning point of the season, because now everybody's got to know each other a social grounds, and it made going back to practice and everything a whole lot more different, a whole lot more focused. And they finished out winning the last 5 regular season games, and then the Thunder stumbled, so they ended up getting first place at 6-2. And then they romped through the playoffs afterwards too. And it was kind of crazy. The Thunder got upset too in their semifinal game, but the Hilltops were on a roll by that point. And that was the start of the 6 in a row. And then in the next season, they ended up sweeping the Thunder in the season series. So that just assured, okay, we've won the title, but the next season proved, okay, we've handled the Thunder, gotten over the Thunder hump again, and that's not becoming the big worry point like it had been at the end of the 2013 season and at the beginning of the 2014 season. So you got over that block too, if there's any lingering mental block at that point too, because the Thunder are a really well run program too. So of course there's that natural rivalry there. But yeah, I remember that 2014 season when it started, it was wow, it was kind of in this dark place. So you were at that point, okay, all you wanted to do is just win the next week to get 2-2, and you start focusing on each point of the season again. And that's when things took off. So that's always been a memorable season. And then going into 2015, it felt like the 2014-2015 seasons were almost kind of an extension of one complete season together, because so many, Hilltops only had like 5 graduating players, so most of the team from 2014 came back in 2015. In 2015, it was one of those years. Okay, they're going to win this. This is hands down. They're the favorites, and they lost only 1 game in the last game of the regular season, and went through had a spectacular year and ended up playing Okanagan. The Okanagan Sun here in Saskatoon, the final. That actually championship final 2015 was actually quite an exciting game, but the Hilltops came up big with the big plays when they needed it. Ended up winning that game 38-24, and they had the push. It was 31-24, and Hilltops got the last touchdown pass. Evan Turkington caught it from a pass from Jared Andruschuk with about 90 seconds to go, so that pushed it to 14, where you knew you had won. But that one was tight all the way through. But again, the Hilltops did the thing, made the plays, and took it. But yeah, as I said before, you always think, wow, that's starting 2014. You wouldn't have seen that 6 in a row.
Mm-hmm. Well, and playing the Okanagan Sun too, like me being from BC, how powerful of a program that program is in Kelowna there. And because I'm in Kamloops, they have the Broncos, and I think the Broncos have won like 4 or 5 games in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I know the teams there. Yeah, they do have a tough go of it, but yeah, the Sun have always been kind of one of the better teams that have come out of BC. But the Hilltops got them here in that 2015 final. In 2014 they went to Langley and beat the Rams 39-14. But yeah, when the Sun came here, and that Sun team that year kind of felt a bit bad for them, because I think they hadn't lost when they came here. And they had a really focused and disciplined team that year. And as I said, when it came crunch time, just the Hilltops made 2 or 3 more big plays in the championship game, and that really was the difference in that game. But that 2015 game was the one game I always remember, like, this was the showcase of how good the CJFL can be, because both teams in that game, their execution, their play was just outstanding in that one.
Well, and the Sun, and I know that the Sun and the Hilltops, imagine they have a rivalry because of the fact is that the Hilltops have only lost in 3 championship games, and one of them was to the Sun.
Yeah.
It was
that was the first championship final.
In 2000, 36-28 loss, and they came back the next year and beat them. And I'm pretty sure they beat them pretty handily too.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Hilltops won 3 straight in 2001, 2002, and 2003. And then what's been crazy the last 2 seasons, I guess, kind of the cross-conference rivalry has been like the Langley Rams, because, of course, they met the Rams 2 years in a row in the 2018 and 2019 final. And I think one thing I got to give the Rams credit for is they went through a bit of a learning experience, because in 2018 when they played in the Canadian Bowl final, and it was the Hilltops hosted here. The Hilltops that season in 2018, that was one of their perfect seasons. They finished off 11-0, and the closest margin of victory was 18 points. But of course, going into the Canadian Bowl, they were like 10-0 at that point. The closest margin of victory had been 18 points. They beat the Edmonton Huskies in the PFC final by 18. That was your closest game, and I think I forgot to jot this down. For the entirety of that season, the Hilltops only trailed on the scoreboard, I think, like 83 seconds.
Holy jeez.
Seconds. Like, it was...
That's intense.
They were a well-oiled machine. Like, even from the first game of that season, they went to Regina. They beat the Thunder 41-7. And, like, even if the Hilltops win their openers on the first game of the season, like, most times, Sargeant's like, you talk to them after the game, you would have thought they lost, right? Like, I wasn't happy with this. I wasn't happy with this. We're not playing Hilltop football. I got to do a better job of coaching. We all got to do a better job of coaching, and we're going to make sure our guys are, like, ready to go, because obviously results on the field were shown like we did a really poor job. Like, that's how he usually is out the first game of the season. I remember in 2018 after the first game, I remember talking about, what are your thoughts? And like they were as dominant as the score said. Sarge goes, yeah, this game, I gotta say, I'm actually quite happy with how everything went, which you don't normally hear him say after the first game of the season. And it was like, wow, that's kind of different. But yeah, it was a special season. The execution came in, and then of course when they played Langley, it was kind of crazy because the Rams came in and they came in with a lot of bluster that season, and just like I was thinking back of my head, and they were like their team accounts on social media were trying to do some like funny things to stir things up and whatnot, and I'm like superimposing like fan photos, like signs supporting them on like Hilltops fan photos and stuff like that, and I was thinking in my back of my head, it's like, you do know these guys do know who they're playing, and they do know that they've won the last 4 of these in a row, right? And all it does in the Hilltop side is just you use it as motivation. It just made them like more focused, right? And also too, like a lot of times when you're bluster, you're trying to hide up. Maybe you have some self-doubt. So of course that game gets underway, and pretty quickly the Hilltops are up like 28-0, like before you know it, and they win 58-21. And like the Rams, for all their bluster, like it was like pretty much 7 minutes in the game, they weren't saying anything at all. They were just trying, at the point, it just hit the point, they're just trying to get out of that game. And I'm pretty sure they would have wished that second half was just running straight time, because that game was just such a blow and a beating. Like I hate to say it, but the 21 points probably flattered that the Rams scored, probably flattered them in that game, right? And then the next season, of course, the 2018 season, when the Hilltops were undefeated, like they had the veteran team that was in their cycle that, okay, this is the year you expect them to win it, right? They had a lot of veteran starters back. And then 2019, of course, that was the year with that was the year where, okay, you had that bit of changeover where the first and seconds were coming to start. And Tyler Herman was making his 1 year as the starting 5th-year quarterback was that year. And so you knew there was going to be some bumps and growing pains. And that was probably the season I think one of the Hilltops coaching staff did one of their best jobs. And they had a really tough schedule to start. But they ended up getting to the Canadian Bowl with an 11-0 record. And after things were tight the first 4 weeks, and then once everybody was comfortable in their roles after those first 4 hard weeks, they took right off, right? But the Rams had learned, and the Rams because that year they went to Langley and played the Rams again. The Rams did a huge recruiting job, and I remember going into that Canadian Bowl in 2019, like they weren't talking, they were a lot more focused, they were a lot more business-like, and of course the Hilltops had all their going into that game, like they had a whole ton of winning streaks on the line. Of course, you had 5 in a row on that line. They had won 30 straight overall between the regular season playoffs at that time. They had 19 straight CJFL playoff wins on the road at that time. They had 28 straight road wins on that time. So if Langley can win that game, they can put all those streaks to an end if they win that game. But they came out really focused, and that one ended up becoming a defensive slugfest, which in any level of Canadian football, like you don't really see those very much anymore. Like it was a rock 'em, sock 'em, drag 'em out defensive game where the Hilltops defense won that game. Like they were outstanding in that game, and like game with guys like James Pinga and Colton Holmes in the secondary, like that was and Riley Pickett, like that was an outstanding performance by their defense. And the final score ended up being 13-9. The Hilltops didn't even have it ended up being 11-9. The Hilltops didn't even have a touchdown that game. They ended up getting 3 key field goals from Rylan Kleider, who had ice running through his veins, and they had a safety. And yeah, that was how they won. And it was, as they say, a defensive slugfest. So that also showed, the Hilltops, like, it also shows another example of how good they can be. Okay, they can win all sorts of different games. They're not always blowing teams out, or if it's a close game, it isn't their offense going down and scoring a last-minute touchdown to win the game. Like, if it has to be defensive like 1970 slugfest. Their defense could muck it out and physical it out too, and that's what happened in that game. And but like I say, the Rams are pretty impressive. Like they came in focused. You could tell, they definitely learned their lesson from the season before, and so it made anticipation what could have happened of a story for a 2020 CJFL season could have been. But of course, we got that COVID-19 pandemic thing happened. Of course, all that got canceled. But that sixth straight title, it was that championship game. It was a special one too. Of course, it was 6 in a row, but just because of the type of game it was, like you see in Canadian football, even in the pro ranks, you don't see that type of defensive game anymore. And the defenses were on. It wasn't the offenses were screwing up or weren't executing bad. Like the defense in that game were just that good.
Well, with all their success that they've had, especially the 6th straight, and having you and being able to watch that just must have been incredible, just seeing it with your own eyes. And on that moment, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the fan base and how popular how popular the Hilltops are to the fans here in Saskatoon. And also we're going to talk a little bit about Emmarae Dale, too, being the first female player to be on a CJFL roster. So we're going to talk about those things when we come back. So we'll be right back.
At Super 8 Winnipeg West, we have your comfort in mind with free Wi-Fi and free daily Superstart breakfast. We also have guest laundry facilities, a state-of-the-art fitness center, and a jetted hot tub. Sleep well in a spacious guest room equipped with plush new bedding, a 50-inch flat-screen HD TV, microwave, mini refrigerator, and Keurig coffee maker. Or book a suite with a kitchen, ideal for extended stays. Super 8 Winnipeg West, located just inside the perimeter on Portage Avenue.
And we're back here on Amateur Sports TV, the Sask Sports Show here with Darren Steinke. Before the break, we were talking a little bit more about the success of the Hilltops winning 6 straight national championships in a row. Now we're going to talk about the fan base that the Hilltops have. I imagine with all these national championships, they have a bunch of people that are behind them 100%. They come to all their games. Just like any sport, you have those fans that have come in out there and they've watched, and they have their lawn chairs set up, or they're in the bleachers every night, or or their kids have played for the Hilltops and they just still come to the games. I imagine there's all those kind of fans that go to Hilltops games. So, Darren, what is the fan base like for the Hilltops?
Oh, the fan base is outstanding. Like the fans have been great because, of course, a lot of everybody that comes out to the games, like they've all usually had some sort of attachment with the team and stuff, or it's been watching, or like a father's played for them, or a brother's played for them, or so a relative has coached for them, or somebody's been a director or an ex-player, and you're bringing your kids out to see them play, or if it's just the old boys club, the alums coming out to hang out in one of the boxes up top or on the SMF field, or hang out at the beer gardens down below and tell stories about back in the old days when they used to play, or try to make up stories that, if I played now, I probably could still do this. I think some of the alums in the 20s probably could do this. Maybe some in the 30s, the guys in the 40s and 50s, no, that's beyond them now. But it's a really supportive, big supportive family environment, and it's almost like you kind of know where the people are and who like the fans are in the stands, because they're always there and stuff. And then also too with the families, like even after James Voss had graduated, like his parents are still coming, his sister still comes to games, they still sit in the same like spot, like the middle of the west side bleachers, the west side stands at SMF. They're in the same spot like every game, and even Tom Sargeant's wife, like Chris, her and her daughters are always in like the same seats on like more off to the left side of the west side stands and stuff, and you recognize all these these faces all over the place. And also too, you feel like when you go out into the community, like when the guys wear their jackets, like everywhere they walk, like the Hilltops jackets, of course, are the thing. Like the players always wear those. The players have such a special tie to wear like those blue jackets. So when you're out in the community, like people know, oh yeah, it's a Hilltop player, and they're always coming up and saying good things to you and saying they're proud of you, and just they love how you've represented the city over the years, and that part of it too is going out in the city is like happened like forever. Like it's so funny. I think it was on a Saskatoon history page. I think I found a picture of Ron Adams, who was the quarterback of the 1953 national championship team, out like kind of just walking around Saskatoon back in like 1953 with 2 or 3 of his teammates. Ended up finding that page. I emailed it off to Sarge. Just it's like, yeah, back then it was kind of like that back then, like it is now. And Sarge is really happy. He's like, oh, Darren, thanks for sending this photo. This is like so cool to see and stuff. So it's like you say, the Hilltops provide like almost like that one constant, like things like it's the one good thing. Like if things could be going totally wrong, it's like the one thing you always look through. It's like, yeah, they're doing things the right way. Things are going right. They're doing things the right things. Things are going right for them, and it almost gives you like a sense of security. No matter how big things are, how bad other things could be in your life, the Hilltops and the Hilltop family is always going good.
And with how loyal these the Hilltops fans are, would you consider them to be in the same league of fans with how loyal they are to the Saskatchewan Roughriders? And we all know Saskatchewan Roughriders, being in the CFL, they're in the top 4 of Canadian sports teams merchandise sold. I'm pretty sure, but would you like even their fan base? Could you compare the both of them to be similar?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways they are. A lot of ways they are. Just of course the Riders, it's so much bigger because you've got the whole province, right? But the Hilltops are so embedded in the community and of course it's basically a community team run by a volunteer board of directors. So it's kind of like basically, of course, the Riders have paid positions, but the Riders were formed that way, right? Too, and the Hilltops in that way are the way they've been formed. It is basically a similar model to the Riders, and you almost have this thing where that's the one thing that's so cool about Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's really community oriented, and they're really into their sports teams, and the Hilltops have benefited from that way. So you do have kind of that thing with the Riders, and also too, you also see that in hockey too, like if you go into PA, it's like the same thing with the fan. Like even though it's hockey, it's the same thing with the Raiders and their fan base there. It's like to them, like in the community wise, like the Raiders are like the Riders, and the same thing if you go to Moose Jaw with the Warriors or Swift Current with the Broncos, especially when the Broncos made their run and won the WHL title in 2018 and won the World Cup that year. But it's the same thing there, and like the surrounding community area supports them, and yeah, like the Hilltops have a huge fan base, like with football, like you say, because here it's like people that follow the Riders in Saskatchewan, it's become a generational thing, and you've had with the Hilltops, you've had all these generations starting in 1947, and you can trace like people. Okay, I got involved in this team because either my aunt or uncle or my neighbor was involved, and he was there this years before, and you can like, if you wanted to, you can almost trace it back to like 1947, and it's a really cool thing that way.
Well, and I can't wait. Like they have their season set. They set the schedule as if COVID wasn't happening and their season was going to go on. And I'm pretty sure it starts around August 8th. The Hilltops open up against Edmonton in Edmonton. So when they do come home, I think that's the first place I'll be going in August is to a Hilltop game to experience that. Lived in Kamloops for how many years? Never went to a Bronco game. So that's exciting to look forward to, at least with them setting the schedule. But one more thing I wanted to talk about before we kind of get into the mental health and COVID talks is Emmarae Dale. She becomes the first woman to become or to be on a Canadian Junior Football League roster. She previously played for the Valkyries in the Women's CFL right here in Saskatoon. And I just kind of want to know from your take how important that was and what kind of person and player that she is.
Oh, she's like say Emmarae's a gem. Like you won't find any person that's like better, or just as sweet as her, just like a very like just personable, perfect person as her. And yeah, I was and she's an outstanding athlete. Like if you see her work out at United Athletics at the Gordie Howe Sports Complex, it's crazy how powerful and explosive she is. Of course, she's also was a member of the University of Saskatchewan Huskies track and field team, and did participate with them in all their throwing events. And she probably could do also all the running events too, because she's just that fast. And yeah, the other thing that's been cool with Emmarae, of course, with her coming to the Hilltops, is she's following in the footsteps of her two older brothers, Anthony and Donovan Dale. Both played for the Hilltops and won multiple national championships with them. And when she was little, because I mean, she's pretty much the youngest in her family, she went to like all their games and stuff. So the family's well known with the team, and also too, she picked up literally like Tom Sargeant and Jeff Yowsey. Basically, well, Jeff Yowsey, the Hilltops defensive coordinator, was the Valkyries head coach when Emmarae started with them, and then he stayed around one more season in 2017 as their defensive coordinator. So he was Emma's defensive coordinator for a year. So Jeff had firsthand experience dealing with her as an athlete, and then Sarge kind of went and scouted her out. At basically Jeff and Sarge got talking about her. It's like, hey, Emmarae, like athletic wise at middle linebacker, like she's really explosive, she's really good. And Jeff like targeted her as like, if somebody can make the jump from the WWCS CFL onto our team, it'd be Emma. Of course, the one thing that also helped Emma was the age. She was of age, she was able to do it and stuff too, because the WWCFL, like you can have players that are like as young as 18 or almost. There's some players in that league that are like 35 or 39. Like you have all sorts of the age spectrum. So Emma was of age. She had the athletic ability. So Sarge went to watch her play and watched her play, and they both thought, yeah, this should be something. So they went and talked to her about it, and hey, we'd like you to come out. We'd like you to put you on the team. We think this is something you can do. And I know I talked to Sarge. Like Sarge isn't a publicity stunt guy. That's not him. It's like if you're not able to play, he's not going to be talking to you. So if you're able to play, he's going to talk to you. And that's basically what it came down to. And at least one thing that they were able to do this past season, even though they're running games, were allowed to practice together in a team setting for about 6 weeks. So Emmarae got to go down and practice with the team for like 6 weeks, and they did drills and they introduced their defense. And the other thing that's kind of cool, because the Valkyries, most of their coaches are ex-players from the Hilltops or ex-players from the Huskies, but they run, believe it or not, they actually run kind of the same defensive system the Hilltops do. So when they plumped Emmarae in there at middle linebacker, she was actually making the calls already and making the reads and picking things up like right away, even just in those practice sessions. So I was like, wow, this is like and even the other players could pick up on that. They're just like, wow, she knows what's going on. And also with the other thing that made the transition easier onto the team was most of the Hilltops players in the offseason work out at Ignite Athletics, where Emmarae works out, and Donovan Dale, her older brother, is one of the trainers at Ignite now too. So they all knew Emmarae from working out there, and of course the Hilltops and Valkyries, they actually are really good contact. A lot of the Hilltop players actually go out to the Valkyries games when their season on. A lot of the Valkyries players come out to the Hilltops games, so they have a really good connection that way. So a lot of the guys knew who Emmarae was, and she was like the same age of them, and some of them had gone to school with her at St. Joseph's High School. So when she came in, it was a really easy transition. When she came in, they all know her. They all knew what she was about. They all could see what she could lift at Ignite. So they're like, well, we know even though she's 5'6", 5'7", like she's powerful enough to be here and quick enough to be here. Like she's got all the tools. So she just like fit in, and when it rolled, when you watch the practice sessions, you did almost wish, it's too bad there wasn't a season last year. But it just gets pushed off to 2021. They said everybody that would, because she was going to be in that 22-year-old age group. They said, they granted everybody from last year that couldn't play, that was as 22-year-olds, they can come back next year as 23-year-olds because, of course, with COVID, you didn't have a season. So, it's going to be one of the big fun things to, I guess, anticipate next year. And the other cool thing too is like when Donovan and Anthony played. I should always mention this because, of course, when the Hilltops practice at Ron Atchison Field, they always have this tradition that parents always line up their cars on the one side of the field and they watch practice all this. The parents are like at every practice, right? So, of course, when Anthony and Donovan played, like the Dale parents were always at every practice. So when Emma was starting to practice this past September into October, like her mom and dad were there, and it was like nice and familiar for the coaches. Like Sargeant come out big, huge smile. Oh, hey Dales, how's it going? And it was like, it's so happy to see you guys out here all again and stuff. For another player was coming through, and it just it was cool to see like that connection happen again too. So it was it's going to be a fun thing to look forward to like this year. And fingers crossed. Of course, everybody here realizes what's happening with the pandemic. So like fingers crossed, like things that are out of your control allow things to happen. But that's just the way it is right now.
Well, it seemed like, it didn't take her very long to step into that role. Like you said, knew everybody anyways, and she was athletic and fit enough to play for the Hilltops. So it's going to be very exciting to see her play, in this 2021 season. And on that note, it is everyone's favorite time of the show. It is commercial time here on the Sask Sports Show. So when we come back, to finish off the show, where I'm going to be talking with Darren a little bit about the mental health side of sports. I know he works at the Gordie Howe Sports Complex as well, and he was a part of the Bell Let's Talk Day last Thursday. So we're just going to talk a little bit about mental health. And so we'll be back in just a moment. And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show, brought to you on Amateur Sports TV. My apologies, with Darren Steinke. And throughout the whole show, he was kind of giving us the rundown on the Saskatoon Hilltops. That's our topic that we picked, and he gave us a lot of information about the Hilltops. He's been covering for them for the last 6 years. So now we're kind of moving over to the end of the show, where we're going to be talking about the mental health aspect of not just football being canceled, but all sports being canceled. And he was a part of the Bell Let's Talk Day with the Gordie Howe Sports Complex. And right off the bat, I just want to ask you what kind of work you've done for that day and throughout the year as well.
Yeah, well, for that day, it was, of course, I've written a few posts over the time because, of course, in my career, I ran into some mental health problems on my own front, and my time in Medicine Hat in 2012. I'm doing the Coles Notes version of that here. So that's kind of where, for my interest or my involvement began. And when after I left Medicine Hat, I began writing about my journey. Once I moved here, and it started out actually with a couple of posts that weren't actually on Bell Let's Talk Day. And then for myself, it became like an annual thing for Bell Let's Talk Day. And so my first couple of posts, it's almost like Rob Vanstone of the Regina Leader post. Like he laid out like his whole story, like right from the beginning of what he had been dealing with on that front. And when I first couple posts I dealt with, that's kind of what I did. And then for every Bell Let's Talk Day, I kind of, as the years went on, I'd pick like a topic. Like one year it would be like dealing with triggers, and then how to try to what I do with dealing with triggers, and the other things would be like just whatever it might be, a feeling like if you might be like stuck in a rut or just almost a different aspect of mental health. And of course, this year we talked about just dealing with it in the pandemic, right? And on the Gordie Howe Sports Complex side, more or less for them, it was a lot of it. For myself was, of course, I'm a communications coordinator there. It's like we always try to, the 2 years I've been there for 2 Bell Let's Talk Days, so we always try to make sure we put together posts and stuff like that so for people to retweet, because of course that's part of the campaign where each retweet and mention is like 5 cents that gets donated from Bell for mental health research and all the mental health charities and initiatives. So for the first year I did it because on the Gordie Howe side, it was we did a quick picture with Greg Nickel, who was one of our Zamboni driver, with wearing one of the toques, which happened to be given to me by Caitlin Willoughby, who used to be the captain of the U of S Saskatchewan Huskies women's hockey team. And so we did something with that. This year I tried to do a little more planning, but sometimes even this year I was like, because I wanted to let's get some of the actual Bell Let's Talk cartoon boards and stuff, try to make a couple signs. And at first I thought I was going to be behind because when I got in touch with them, it ended up being the first week of January, because usually we trying to plan that stuff like in December and stuff. But they were really good. They sent me out like a community kit that they gave out to nonprofits. So I was able to give out like 4 toques to the staff, some lanyards, and able to set up some messages. Because for that, we're just trying to do kind of something simple and sweet and be able to put together some posts for our social media lines to be able to retweet and stuff like that on that front. I will say, like at our complex, of course, Ignite Athletics, who does a lot of our physical training, they're great to have. They're great to have, as we say, part of the Gordie Howe Sports Complex family, because they're just so good at all the physical training side of everything. But through Ignite, there is actually, they've got a component where if athletes are having any troubles, that they can put them in touch with a counselor, and they have a program to help athletes out with mental health, and so they're really good that way. So for any of the athlete side at the complex, through Ignite Athletics, anybody that's training with them, if they need to see something, the guys there have a contact and mechanisms for athletes to be able to like seek help or get at least pointed in the right direction. So yeah, those are kind of my things. Like I say on my blog this year, I wrote about just more or less the frustrations with COVID. For myself, I felt like, because I've had to deal with anxiety and stuff, like I've got a lot of experience where my blog's like, yeah, I've had experience. For me personally on my front, I said, it's been different for me because I feel like I've been handling it well, but I can tell like a lot of my other friends, like over the years, like they've all had, like this has affected everybody, but you can tell who's struggling a little more and who isn't. And so you just put out the message, well, I'm not a psychologist, but you need to take the first step to listen, like I'll lend my ear to listen. And then from there, try to point somebody into the right direction where if they need professional help. And sometimes professional help doesn't mean you're going to counseling for 8 weeks. Sometimes it's a problem that's like minor, and you might need to see a counselor twice to formulate some game plan. Just so you're finding for you, what works is your proper ways of your behavior to be able to respond to something, figure out what you're not responding to well, and then figure out a game plan to respond to what you're not responding well into in a more appropriate way or more healthy way to say.
And I think that's awesome because like you, I've gone through some mental health issues myself with anxiety and sobriety as well, going through that and whatnot. So I'm glad that and especially in this time too, like this is unprecedented times. Probably the most used words in 2020, I imagine, and pandemic and COVID-19.
It is what it is that way too.
And I think in this time, especially in 2020, the rise of mental health issues that people have had because they've been stuck in their homes. They haven't been able to do what they love. They haven't been able to play sports. They haven't been able to hang out with their family or have Christmas together or go to the Mexico for a vacation just to get away from all of that. They can't get away from anything.
Yeah, and then also other things that have been taken our lives, like I know sport events, but as I always tell one people is like, well, one of the big things taken out, like the high school grads, like most grade 12 grad is like an industry, like it's like one of the biggest things on the planet. Like I know dress shops that like basically their whole business is high school grad dresses and selling like $500 to $1,000. Well, some of them are way more than $1,000 dresses and the pomp and pageantry. Like high school grad is like become like this huge monstrous thing in the social media. And for the current kids, that's a huge loss that they don't have in their lives. You look forward to this for like 12 years, and then when your chance comes, you don't get like your full chance on it. And I know other people have like had to postpone weddings and all sorts of different special occasion things too, or sometimes family reunions. And on the sports side, it's not always games. Like right when COVID hit, like I was going to be going back to Medicine Hat. Bob Ridley is 2 games away from calling his 4,000th game, but his 4,000th game was supposed to be on a Saturday in Medicine Hat, and then the Tigers weren't supposed to play for 3 days afterwards. And there was going to be a bunch of old guys old alums coming back for that game. There's going to be like kind of a little celebration after the game or get together. And of course, all those special things, that was like the first thing in my life that got canceled or cut off because of COVID or postponed because the WHL paused the season. So, but there's a lot of people because for something like that, there had been like a planning for a year that had already been done. And so there were a lot of people you might be booking flights or thinking about going out to that. And you didn't even get to enjoy that. So as I say, everybody's dealt with something. And it's just tough that way. I wish I could say something about better, but it's all cliche, just the way things are right now. You got to just take it one day at a time, one moment at a time. And for some people, I find you've got to kind of budget how much time you spend on social media and stuff, or sometimes watching the mainstream news, like, because sometimes you can get so wrapped up on that, and that just becomes the thing that drags you down, right? And like sometimes if you're watching a newscast for 4 hours straight and all you're getting are bad stories or negative stories on the COVID front, I'm like, that's probably not the best way to be spending your time. So, but yeah, just one day at a time, one moment at a time, and you just keep going like that.
And you know what, my last question for you, Darren, before we wrap things up is, with this ongoing pandemic, with COVID, let me ask you 2 questions, actually. Yeah. Do you ever think that they're going to go back to normal? And how long do you think that it's going to take? How many years do you think it's going to take for sports to get back to normal?
Oh boy, those are tough questions here. I think there will be a normal. I don't know what the new normal. I don't know what that's going to look like, because of course right now we're like, even the past 10 months, normal's changed on like a day to week to a month basis, depending on the restrictions. I think sports in Canada, and even with some leagues in the U.S. have gone started, I think sports, they're going to be in a reset. Like when things hit the point where they say the pandemic's over and everything can start happening again, I'm not anticipating like youth sports to look like what it did, or a lot of the minor sports. CJFL, I think, will still look like it did, and there'll be a national championship. But I think there's some sports bodies, like there might be like in minor sports, like in hockey or like baseball, like at the under 18 ranks, it might be possible where they might end up having to do like a Western championship or Eastern championship, depending what financial shape a lot of these sports bodies are in, right? Because of course none of these bodies have money coming in right now. So I think there's going to be reset. I don't totally want to speculate how it's going to look. All I know is if you're thinking sports is going to come back like it was in Canada on March 10th, 2020, before any of the restrictions happened, like once the pandemic ends, I think, no, that's a bad expectation to have. That's not how it's going to be. But yeah, I don't really want to totally speculate. All I know is it's not going to be the same. There could be, in some leagues, like some youth sports leagues, there could be teams that don't come back, or even in some junior hockey leagues or junior leagues or even midget under 18 leagues and stuff, there might be teams that don't come back or something. Or if they, like I say, before you, in some sports bodies and some sports, you might actually have a Western or Eastern championship before you have a nationals again. And it depends, like you say, a lot depends how much money or how much of a financial hit all these bodies have taken over the last little bit.
Well, Darren, I hope that sports go back to normal. I'm missing my WHL.
Yeah.
It's good that the NHL has come back, but just being able to go to the SaskTel Center and watching a Blades game, or going down to Regina or the Brand Center watching a game, or just watching any sort of junior hockey.
Yeah.
Going to watching some SJ games or something like that. It's been a rough year for sports fans, because there hasn't been a whole lot of sports to watch. Like we talked about tonight, the Hilltops. No one got to watch Hilltops football this year. Them actually play games.
Yeah, and I think when a lot of these teams do come back, I think like when they do start playing, like I'm talking about, okay, for some leagues there might not be nationals right away, but you're still going to be having your provincial leagues. I think they're still going to be going as normal as possible. Something like the Dub, like the Raider games and the Pats games and the Blades games are, once this is over, the actual game day experience will return like it was before. So when you go to the rink, yeah, that part of it's going to feel normal and stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, that Pats versus Warriors game, like in Regina, oh yeah, the rivalry's still there and they're still going at it. And the fans in the stands from Moose Jaw and Regina will still be giving each other the gears and whatnot. Like, I think that's part of it will come back. It's just pretty quickly as soon as the pandemic ends. And I'm just saying, yeah, maybe some of the other things is when you try to get together for national competitions, I think that might be the big thing where I could see that being a situation. Well, depending on how healthy sports leagues are, it might be a 2-year, 3-way thing. It depends if the money's there. That's just how it goes. So, but as far as going to a WHL game, when that starts going, yeah, when the pandemic ends, I totally anticipate that's going to be back. The game day experience is going to be back what it was before on the daily basis. Yeah, as it was like on March 10th in 2020.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's all we can do is hope, and hope that this thing, sports do come back. But you know what, Darren? Thanks a lot for coming on the Sask Sports Show tonight. I really appreciate it. We talked about yourself. We talked about the Hilltops. We talked about mental health. Those are 3 really big things that have been going on right now. And you've told some stories. You've gotten everybody. You've given everybody a little bit more information on the Hilltops, which is awesome. So again, I say thank you, Darren.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. And like I say, all my time in sports, I've loaded with stories. So anytime you want to have me talk about anything, just feel free to give me a shout.
Oh, well, I imagine I'm gonna have you on the show at some point. But Darren Steinke, everyone.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
Okay, so that concludes another episode of the Sask Sports Show here on Amateur Sports TV. I just wanted to give a big shout out to our sponsors of the show, Southwest Terminal. And make sure to catch every episode of the Sask Sports Show live on Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Time. And if you've missed an episode, you can always get it from our archives on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, on our Periscope page, and also on amateursports.tv. That is our website. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and have a good night, and we'll see you next week.